Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today with my April 2020 book wrap-up. So these are all of the books that I read last month. So I have 7 books to talk about today. Before I dive into that though, I do want to say a huge thank you to Rachel from the Shades of Orange. Rachel is actually a person that I mentioned in my top 5 underrated booktuber video that I did back at the beginning of the year. After that video, she actually got in contact with me and asked me if I'd be part of a collaboration video that she was working on to release in the month of May. That video just released recently and it is excellent. Definitely check it out if you want to find some more like-minded booktubers. Obviously, they're going to be talking about horror books, but there are booktubers with other interests as well, much like I have other interests as well. So check that out if you're interested. Not only will you get a list of excellent people to subscribe to, but you'll also get a list of really cool books to read. I mean, somebody talked me into a poetry collection, which is just ridiculous. The fact that I now want to read something that is related to poetry blows my mind, but it looks really cool. So check out that video. And thanks to that video, I also did get some more subscribers. Frankly, my subscriber count has doubled since that video went live, which is just amazing. So if you are new here, 1, thank you so much for hitting that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And 2, hopefully I will put together content that you enjoy watching enough to stay subscribed as the days go on. So thank you so much for being here. I hope that it's worth your time. Again, thank you, Rachel, so much for putting that video together. I really enjoyed watching it. I was even happier to be a part of it. So thank you so much. So with that said, let's now talk about those 7 books that I read this month. I have some true crime to talk about, some middle grade to talk about. I have a whole bunch of different things. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The first book I want to talk about today was the only audiobook on my TBR for last month, and that was Jaws by Peter Benchley. So this was released in 1974, and then of course the huge blockbuster film came out the following year, and just kind of took the world by storm at that point. Now, I have seen this film countless times now, and I absolutely love it. It is a great film, and so I really wanted to check out the book that it was based off of. I will mention I did borrow this on Hoopla, so if you want to check it out, your library might have it on Hoopla, so you can find it there for free if you have a library card. So definitely check that. But anyway, back to the book itself. So this one is one that I've been wanting to read for quite some time now. I really want to read Meg, which is another giant shark movie, but I figured I better, start with kind of the original and then move on from there. So that's why I decided to read Jaws this past month. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it, but oh my gosh, this is a significantly different book than I was expecting. I was going to say a significantly different story, but in reality, the story is pretty much the same, but it's structured differently. There are a lot of different beats throughout it. So obviously I'm not going to talk about any spoilers or anything like that. I did want to do a book versus movie on this, but when I do these these wrap-ups, I typically go in the order I read them, and Jaws was the first book I finished last month, so that means I finished it back in the very beginning of the month. So at this point, I don't know if I remember enough of like the small details that a book versus movie would be, anything worth watching. So I probably just move on from it. But I will say, I have to talk about this. There is a relationship in the book that is just non-existent in the film, and it plays a significant role, and it has to do with Brody's wife and Hooper. I'll leave it there, but this thing goes places I wasn't expecting at all, and the ending is a little bit different, but again, I'm not going to get into details, and it's not significant. It's just minor details that are different, but I don't know. It was a really fascinating read because it introduces this idea of this kind of early on, this relationship kind of early on, but it plays a significant role in the book. Like almost like the entire middle of the book is focused on this relationship. So it's so crazy. Definitely check out the book if you liked the movie, because there are, it's the same story. It's the same general idea, but there's a lot of differences that make it very unique and very interesting to read if all you've done over the years is watch the film over and over again. So I enjoyed it. If I had to pick one, I'll do a little mini book versus movie right now. If I had to pick one, it's really hard to top the movie. Just the acting in the movie is fantastic. It is just so classic. I've seen it so many times. I love it. But that said, I really did like the book. So I would pick the movie over the book, but I still gave the book 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend it if you are a fan of the film. It's so interesting. That's just the word I keep coming back to. Unexpected. So check it out if you're interested in that. The second book I finished last month was another one from my TBR, and this is a sequel to a book I read for the first time last year and really loved. And this is Quarrys List, written by Max Allan Collins. So this is from the Hard Case Crime publishing company, and so you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to get. This is a crime fiction story. You know, it's very noir. It's just gritty and dirty, and I love it. I had never read any crime books before I read Quarry, and I fell in love. I think Max Allan Collins is such an excellent writer. I really loved his style, and that trend continues here. I loved Quarrys List. I thought it was just so interesting, probably even better than the first book, which surprised the hell out of me because I like the first book so much. But I'll talk a little bit about it. I don't want to say too terribly much because one, it's a sequel, and two, I do plan on doing a full review on this book soon. But obviously we're following the main character. Quarry is a book series from Max Allan Collins, so clearly the main character makes it through, at least so far. And so Quarry is a hitman. And so what he does best is murder people. But when we pick up on Quarry's List, basically he's retired at the beginning of this book. And so what happens is a couple people come and try to murder him. But because he's Quarry and he does what he does, he turns the tables on them and is basically trying to figure out why these people are after him and what he can do to stop it. Because he feels that if he doesn't do something to stop it, then it's never going to end. It's just going to be a continuous cycle of people trying to find him and trying to kill him. So he wants to kind of cut it off at the head, if you will. So what I really liked about this one is the love interest. So I'm guessing, at least for the first two books, there's always been some type of love interest. The first one was kind of weak, but it's kind of what I expected for it. This one is a lot deeper. I really like this love interest in this book, and it just goes so much further with it. I don't want to give away anything because, I don't talk spoilers in these wrap-ups at all, and I don't want to talk too much about the first book, so it's difficult to really say a lot about, but if you are into crime at all, if you have read any of Max Allan Collins' other work and you like his style, definitely check this one out. The other thing you might recognize this from is Cinemax. So this is actually a television series, or was. I honestly don't know if it's still going or not. After I read the original Quarry novels, I want to check out the series. So Max Allan Collins wrote, I believe it was 6. It's either 5 or 6. I think it's 6 Quarry novels back in like the 60s and 70s. And then he came back to it in the 2000s. And so there was a big long gap in between them. So what I'm most interested in are the original 6. And then eventually I'll probably check out the rest. There's even a graphic novel that has some, I think it's like a short story collection of graphic novel form. So it sounds really interesting, but I really like this series. I am just chomping at the bit to get to the third book, which I didn't put on my May TBR, but if I get through my other books, I plan on reading it. If not, worst case scenario, it'll probably be on my June TBR because I really enjoyed this. So I'm really liking this series. I hope it continues. I've heard that this is one of the best ones in the series, and so far it's probably at the top of my list as well. So if that sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend this one. I ended up giving Quarrys List by Max Allan Collins 4.5 out of 5 stars. Speaking of full reviews, the next book I finished was a graphic novel, and this is V-Wars Volume 1, Crimson Queen. This is written by Jonathan Mabry, and it is art by Alan Robinson. So I did a full review of this on the channel. Definitely check that out. I'll try to remember to link it up in the cards above. But I thought this was just so cool. I was really blown away by it because I wasn't expecting it to be much at all. The reason I decided to read this one last month is because my wife is a big fan of the V-Wars Netflix series. Yes, this was eventually converted into a Netflix original series. Unfortunately, it's only lasted one season, and season 2 just got canceled sometime last month. But so this was something that she's really liked, mostly because of the main character is what is his name? Ian Somerhalder is the main character in Vampire Diaries. So that's why she checked that out initially, but she really liked it. So I wanted to give this a read before we actually I dove into the series, and so it's only an 11-issue run. V-Wars Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 5, I believe. Yeah, 1 through 5. And so I'm about halfway into the series now. I'm actually reading Volume 2 as I speak. It is on my May TBR because I really enjoyed this so much. I needed to continue it and see this through to the end. But this is basically a Civil War story, but wrapped in a vampire shell, I guess is the best way to say it. I was shocked by the depth of this graphic novel. Mabry is an excellent writer, as I'm coming to find thanks to this story. And he does so much with these characters. The vampires themselves are just so unique. It's not just one type of vampire. It's not just this style of vampire. But as I mentioned in my review, there are these other types of vampires. Like you get the like a Satan-looking vampire thing, and then you get like the Nosferatu or the vampire-looking vampire. So I don't know. It's very cool. This graphic novel series is bloody, and it is filled with just espionage and intrigue. I really liked it. If you are interested in vampire stories or like war stories at all, I would definitely recommend checking this out. It is much better than I expected it to be. And this is another one that is available. Volume 1 and Volume 2 are both available digitally on Hoopla. So if you have Hoopla through your library, check it out. You might be able to access it that way. So I ended up giving V-Wars Volume 1 4 out of 5 stars, and I definitely recommend you checking it out. The second and last graphic novel I read last month was one that was on my TBR, and I think I said at that point that I had low expectations, but even those low expectations were not met. This is A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is written by Chuck Dixon, drawn by Kevin West and Bob Almond. So this is from 2006, I believe. Yeah, 2006. It contains issues 1, 2, and 3, 5, 6, and 7. So there's 6 issues in here. And issue number 4 and issue number 8 are also a part of this run from Wildstorm, I believe. Yeah, Wildstorm. But issue number 4 and 8 were standalones. They were like one-shots, essentially. Not part of the full story that's being told here. So that's why they're not included. This was not great at all. So just to give a idea of the art style, not anything to write home about. I don't really like this art style. It's just very generic. Not too much going on with it that makes it interesting to look at. And the story itself was just so weak and pointless. I didn't like this one. So basically what happens here is there is a new family that's moving into town, and they, of course, will move into the correct street. And so it's a brother and a sister. It's a single dad who's raising them. And the brother ends up getting murdered by Freddy in the very first issue, so it's not really a spoiler. And so his sister then is trying to, figure out what happened. She knows about Freddy because she dreams about him on the very first night they're there. That's the night the brother dies, so she knows how he dies, but it's a matter of trying to get other people to believe her, obviously. There's this whole portion of this where these students that are a part of the high school here are trying to bring back this like ancient like Mayan god. And it's just it's to fight Freddy in his dreams. It's so ridiculous and told so poorly. It's just like streamed right through, or they rush right through the entire story that it never has any time to build at all. So it's incredibly forgettable, not well drawn, not written well. I did not like this at all. I ended up giving this one 1.5 out of 5 stars. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, of course, but it's not very good. Now, that said, if anyone has any tips for me on how to acquire this Friday the 13th graphic novel, I am all ears because I really want to read this one. I know I didn't like this one at all, but this is written by Jimmy Palmiotti, or I think that's how you say it, Palmiotti, I guess would be how you say it. But he is an excellent writer. He does a lot of Harley Quinn stuff along with some other things. I've read The Pro from him, which was just bonkers and really good. So he's an excellent writer. So I really want to read Friday the 13th, but it's really expensive online. So if anyone knows of any inexpensive ways to acquire this, legally, of course, I would love to hear about it because I really want to check this out. There is also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I'm just a big fan of. So I'd love to read that too. But I'm guessing that it will probably be on par with this. That Friday the 13th one, though, I feel like might be better just because it's by an excellent author that I know. So anyway, like I said, I gave Nightmare on Elm Street 1.5 out of 5 stars. Don't recommend this one. Don't seek it out. It's not cheap online, so don't waste your money. I did not like this one very much at all. Next up, moving from graphic novels over to middle grade, is a series I've been wanting to start for the longest time. This is another one I plan to do a full review on very soon. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but this is Animorphs. This is the first book in the Animorphs series, titled The Invasion, and this whole series is written by K.A. Applegate. So this cover aside, which is just horrible, I do have the second book on my May TBR, and it has this really cool, it looks the same, but it's a hologram, so it's just much cooler. But anyway, this was from 1996, and it is, like I said, a middle grade sci-fi story. So if you like Goosebumps, but you're looking for sci-fi, you might check out Animorphs, which really is such a bad way to describe it because I feel like this book does so much more than Goosebumps does. It's a much deeper story than Goosebumps is willing to do for most of the time anyway. So basically, this is the story of an alien invasion on Earth. It's kind of a mix of like invasion of the pod people, invasion of the body snatchers, and I don't know, middle grade fiction. I don't know. I guess it was a terrible idea to try to compare it to something, but it is very much in that same vein. So if you are interested in middle grade, if you're interested in sci-fi, interested in stories like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this is a really well-written middle grade story. So these four kids come together and they basically stumble upon this alien creature. And that's what gets them sucked into this whole invasion plot. This alien creature that they come in contact with, though, gives them this ability to morph into animals. And so that's what the title stems from, Animorphs, and what the entire series is going to be based off of. So this really was just setting everything up. And then, obviously, as the story progresses, I'm sure we're going to learn more. From what I understand, it is basically each of these novels, each of these stories focuses on one main character. Like this was the story of Jake. I was trying to remember his name, Jake. And then we have Rachel, Cassie, and Tobias, and Marco. And so I think each book kind of follows each one of them. The story will progress, but you're going to follow a different main character throughout each one. So I really enjoyed Jake as the main character. I'm really interested to see, because I think the next one is either Rachel or Cassie. I can't remember. I haven't started that yet, so I don't know, but it's one of the girls. And so I don't know. I just really like this. It was much better than I expected it to be, which I've been saying a number of times, which is always a good thing in my book. So I don't know. We'll see how this series continues, but the first outing was really, really strong. I actually blew through this one in about 2 days. I read like half of it in one night, which obviously, take a look at the font. That's not really that impressive. I don't read fast, but this one, it had me hooked. So I read for quite a while in one sitting, which is the difference, I guess, between me reading far into a book or not. But I really enjoyed it. So Animorphs #1, The Invasion by K.A. Applegate, I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is the second audiobook I finished last month, and this is an Audible original that I actually purchased last month on sale for $5, like I talked about in my pickup video, and it is Call Me God, The Untold Story of the DC Sniper Investigation, and it's written by a number of people, but most notably the Clementi brothers, who are both FBI agents that help work on the case. So this is a true crime story, so if you're into that, check out this book. It was fascinating. I was just enthralled by this story from the very first chapter. So again, let me repeat, it is an Audible original. So it really reads more like, or feels more like a podcast than an actual written narrative. But it's so well done. It's absolutely worth your time if you are into true crime. So I had no idea the extent of the brutality of these DC snipers. So obviously, if you don't know, the DC snipers were a two-man team that ended up murdering, well, throughout their entire spree, it was killing 17 people and wounding 10 others. I initially thought that they were stuck to like the DC area. I know it was Virginia, Maryland, and the Washington DC area. And this was back in like October of 2002. So I didn't realize that their killing spree actually began like months earlier and was a cross-country spree, essentially, of murders to finally end up in this DC area where they started using the sniper rifle and picking off people from their car. Like, this was just, these two individuals were some of the sickest I've read about just because of how cold they were and how unfeeling the entire thing was. Oh, it was horrifically sad, But at the same time, I couldn't stop listening to this. I needed to know all I could about this, and this does a really good job of summarizing the whole thing. And I'm sure there are other books, if you want to read more, that might go into, different detail or more detail, whatever the case may be. But hearing it from the people that worked this investigation themselves, family members of people that were shot, some of the survivors themselves, was, in my opinion, probably the best way to, at least to dip my toes into this story, I guess would be the best way to say it. Because you're not going to find people that are more knowledgeable about this than those that actually lived through it. I don't know what else to say about it. It is a true crime masterpiece, in my opinion. And again, it's an Audible original, so it's really more of a podcast than, an actual, written book. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't take anything away from it. It doesn't make it any lesser. And in fact, I think it kind of adds to how important it is for this story to be told. If you are interested in true crime, if you have heard about the DC snipers and want to know more, please, this is the book to read. This is so fascinating. I'm not sure if there's a better way to ingest this story than Call Me God, so I highly recommend this one. I ended up giving Call Me God by the Clementi brothers 5 out of 5 stars. The last book I read last month is one that I was so excited to get to, and now that I've read it, I'm really happy I did. And this is my first novelization I have finished, and I can talk about on the channel, and this is Star Wars: A New Hope. You can see it's credited to George Lucas, but it's really written by Alan Dean Foster based on the script by George Lucas. And what I thought was most interesting is that this is the story of the movie. Like, there's one thing in particular that I can recall that was new to the book that either got cut from the films or it just didn't make it to the final version of the film for whatever reason. And that is a relationship with a character called Big, or Biggs. I don't know. I don't remember if there's an S at the end or not, and it is a friend of Luke's who he knows from home. And then eventually he meets up with again toward the end of the book as well. But I really liked that. I thought it added a lot of character to Luke and his background. So I really like that I've read it now in this book, which of course this is not canon, but who cares if it's canon or not? It's still an entertaining story. It doesn't really matter if what I know about the Star Wars universe, Disney considers it legitimate or not. That really doesn't mean too much to me. So, it is what it is. But this is technically not canon. So if that does matter to you, this is part of the Legends line now. But I don't know. I really enjoyed this. One thing I will say, which I wasn't expecting, is Alan Dean Foster's writing style is notably different than probably any other book I've read, at least lately that I can recall. The problem, though, is that I'm not sure I'm smart enough, really, to pinpoint what I mean by that and what the differences are. But I will say it's almost as if he's writing in a style similar to the way Yoda speaks. Now, it's not nearly as exaggerated as that, so don't get me wrong, but it's like he's using parentheticals a lot in each of his sentences, and it's not all the time, but it did require me to go back and read a sentence more than once on a lot more occasions than I ever have to do when I'm reading anything else. So it might just be the style. I've not read a lot of, I don't know if you'd even consider this hard, probably not, but I've not read a lot of genuine science fiction from the 70s, and so maybe it's because of that. But either way, it was notable, so I wanted to talk about it. And like I said, it's almost as if he's writing in parentheticals. I don't know if that's accurate or not to what his style is, but that's what comes to my mind at least. So, basically what I thought was, most interesting is that if you've seen the movie, you've basically read this book. Like I mentioned, there is that one character that's added in here, or at least given more depth, if nothing else. But other than that, there's not a whole lot more going on here. I did really like hearing more of the internal dialogue, internal monologue that was going on through a lot of these different scenes. And I really enjoyed this. And that's saying what I've said is not a knock on this book at all. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's just, I don't know how necessary it was for me to read this because I've seen the film so many times. So, I do want to continue on in the series. I do have Empire Strikes Back on my TBR for May, but I forgot, I actually want to read, which So I want to read The Splinter of the Mind's Eye first, which I totally forgot about. So I probably won't get to Empire Strikes Back in May. I'll probably get to Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So if you don't know, Splinter of the Mind's Eye was the sequel that Lucas had Alan Dean Foster write as a low-budget alternative in case Star Wars A New Hope didn't do well. But of course, Star Wars did excellently, and it's now one of the largest franchises ever. So they didn't need to do it. So it changes things quite a bit from what actually happens in The Empire Strikes Back. But I really want to check it out because it's just an anomaly and something I want to read it. I want to see how different it really is compared to what I know to be the sequels. And obviously it's a huge universe now that was created by Lucas and others as we continue on through the Skywalker saga and moving forward from there. But I really enjoyed this. If you love the films enough, check out the book. It's not going to add a whole heck of a lot, but if you like just the art of reading and want to check out more of Alan Dean Foster's work, there's no reason to skip this one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I ended up giving Star Wars A New Hope, written by Alan Dean Foster, based on the script by George Lucas, 4 out of 5 stars. All right, so that's going to do it for all 7 books that I read in April. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, let me know down in the comments below. What did you read? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know down there. I'd love to have more of a conversation with you guys down there. And if you guys did enjoy this video and you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. If not, thank you anyway for watching. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.